let's take a look at Psalm 61. Psalm 61, and let's go ahead and read the psalm together. This is a psalm of David, and he said, "Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Selah." Now, we've made our way up to there. This is the second half of the psalm. "For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Thou wilt prolong the king's life, and his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." So let's go back to verse 5. We've seen how that David is overwhelmed in verse 2. He's likely running from his son Absalom, but he is far from home, verse 2, from the end of the earth. So he's in a very difficult time personally, and he's away from home, he's displaced, and there's threats on his life and on his throne. So he says, I'm going to cry to God. I'm going to reach out to him when my heart is overwhelmed. I'm going to pray, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And then he rehearses his memory. God's been a shelter for me. He's been a strong tower for my enemy. And he's promised me that I will abide in his tabernacle, his presence, his protection forever. So right now, verse 4, I'm going to trust in the covering of his wings. So Selah is like a break. It's like a pause. We talked about that yesterday. And then he says, "For thou, O God, hast heard my vows." So a vow is a promise. It's a commitment. It is something promised to God from David. Now let me stop and explore this for just a moment and give it the right context. There is, in the life of a gospel believer, there's no place for the thought that a vow will earn me any privilege or salvation from God. Why is that? Because when you come to Jesus Christ as the resurrected Savior, He gives you everything. Okay, all things richly to enjoy. You have all of Him. You have all of His inheritance. You are a joint heir with Jesus. So there's not a lot more that God could bless you with. So the sense of making a vow to God for David and for us is always responsive. It's never if you then I. Okay, it's never God, I'm going to promise you this, so please do this. Okay. In fact, you see this in the Psalm. David's vows were a result of God's blessings. Okay, they were an answer to God's blessings. They weren't in an effort to achieve them or to receive them. So he wasn't making a deal with God. He wasn't trying to leverage or manipulate God. He wasn't on the front end saying, "Hey God, I'll do this if you do this for me." No, it was responsive. And in that sense, he's not trying to earn anything. He is trying to, in the sense of the gospel, a vow is simply a strongly devoted, loving response to a God who's already vowed himself to you. So think of it this way. It's a reasonable answer. "I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service." Everything we do for God, any kind of service, any kind of devotion, any kind of commitment, is responsive in view of His vast, wealthy, lavish love that He's already poured on us. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like somebody elevating you in prominence, prestige, and value, and in provision, in material wealth. Imagine somebody giving you the most opulent portfolio of wealth and material provisions, the best houses, the best vehicles, the best of everything, and it's all yours. It's all at your disposal. How difficult would it be for you to say, "I promise, I vow, I'm going to be devoted to that person"? You get the sense of it? So David has already received all of God's love and grace in lavish ways. And so his heart doesn't simply want to say, I love you. His heart really wants to say, I promise to love you for the rest of my life. Now, if you're David, that's the reasonable response. Here's what's more remarkable to me about this first part of this phrase. What does it gain God if he's already given David everything, and then David turns around and says, I promise to love you in response. I promise to love you for the rest of my life. How is God advantaged? He really isn't. And that's what's remarkable about this verse, because David says to God, you've heard my vows. You actually received my vows and have responded to my vows. There's been a relational transaction here of love and grace where you've showered me with all your grace, and I'm going to promise myself to you. And God, you valued that. And there's no there's no measurable reason why God would value David's vows, or yours or mine, except that he loves David, and that David's return love is meaningful to him. So I want you to think of it this way. My little grandson Augie is really putting sentences together, and he will, when he knows I'm in the house, he will go around the house and say, Papa, where do you go? He'll start asking, trying to find me. And then when he comes up, he'll hug me, and I'll tell him to squeeze me hard. He squeezes me hard. And then I say, I love you. No, actually, yesterday I said, Augie, do you love me? And he looked at me, and I said, do you love me? And he goes, yeah. And he smiled. Okay. And sometimes I'll say, I love you. And he'll say, I love you, kind of put it together. But then after he said, yeah, I said, I love you too. And he said, yeah. And he put his head on my shoulder, and we hugged again. So here's my point. Does Augie really understand full understanding of the definition of love? No, not really. Does he know what he should know about what his heart should be expressing when he says, I love you too, or I love you? No. But in his small understanding, any expression of his love to me is immensely valuable to me. Okay. Am I dramatically advantaged because of it? Do I gain a lot because of it? Emotionally and relationally, yes. Materially, physically, obviously not. But my point is, Augie, not even really fully understanding and not bringing a lot to my table, has received my love, and in his toddlerish way returns it. And that's what a vow is. Okay, a vow is not striking an agreement with God whereby I'm going to get what I want from him. A vow in view of the gospel is a response to God. It's saying, God, you've loved me so much that I'm committing and devoting and vowing my whole life to you forever, for the rest of my life, which is it's a more than reasonable response when you really understand the love of Jesus Christ in the gospel. And it's profound that vow matters to God. Now, let me say this. It's not a light thing to vow to God. You should take it seriously. Okay, it should be a measured thing. You should keep that vow, but you should not have the view that you are in any way advantaging God because of your vow, or that you are able to manipulate or leverage him to do what you want him to do. That's not the point or the purpose. David, in this desperate time, is reminding himself by his prayer to God, my whole life is committed to you, Lord. I have vowed my life to you, and you've heard that vow. So no matter what happens in this life, there's no going back. And why would I go back? You've been a tower, you've been a strong fortress and a shelter for me, and I'm choosing to trust. I'm choosing to abide by the vows that you have heard. And then he looks forward, and we'll just touch on this. He says, you have given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. The heritage is the inheritance, okay? And to fear is to reverence or respect, or again, to trust. That those that see God for who he is, for his love, and decide to trust him and honor him and live in reverence of him and his name. And David said, you've given me the inheritance. And that kind of drives at what I was talking about a minute ago. David had a sense that even though he's in a hard, overwhelmed time, he's been lavished with this exorbitant, vast love of God that's incalculable, immeasurable, and he's got a future that's beyond comprehension. And so he's rehearsing his vows in light of God's blessing, God's inheritance that he's already given him. What a great verse! For thou, O God, hast heard my vows, which thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Isn't it amazing that God would value our vows? By the way, not to mention the fact that we're prone to break them, okay? Even though we're prone to break our vows, even though we trip up and stumble, he still loves us steadfastly, continually, and he still promises us an inheritance that we can never, ever lose.